Last night, I found something in my daughter-in-law Simone's purse that made my blood run cold. It wasn't the fake passport with 3 different names or even the vials of clear liquid labeled insulin that I know she doesn't need. It was the newspaper clipping about an elderly woman who died mysteriously in Florida last year, with my photo paper clipped to it. At first, I couldn't understand why my picture would be attached to a stranger's obituary. But then I noticed the handwritten notes in the margins, the dates circled in red ink, and the chilling words scrawled at the bottom: timeline confirmed, method perfected, next target ready. That's when I realized I wasn't looking at random research. I was looking at a blueprint, and I was the next name on her list. My name is Vivian Carter, and I'm 67 years old. I've lived in this same house on Peachtree Street in Atlanta, Georgia for 38 years. This is where I raised my son Terrell after his father died in a car accident when the boy was just 6 years old. This is where I worked double shifts as a nurse at Grady Hospital to keep food on the table and clothes on his back. This is where I sacrificed everything so my baby could grow up to become the successful man he is today, a civil engineer with his own firm, married to a beautiful woman, living what I thought was the American dream. But that dream has become my nightmare, and it all started 18 months ago when Terrell brought Simone Baptiste home to meet me. I should have known something was wrong from the very beginning. No, that's not right. I did know something was wrong, but I ignored every instinct, every red flag, every warning sign, because I was so desperate to see my son happy. I had been praying for years for him to find a good woman, settle down, maybe give me some grandchildren before I got too old to enjoy them. When he walked through my front door with this stunning woman on his arm, caramel skin, long black hair, curves in all the right places, and a smile that could light up a room, I thought God had finally answered my prayers. I was wrong. God didn't send Simone Baptiste to my family. The devil did. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because what happened over the past 18 months needs to be told in order for you to understand the full scope of what this woman has done to my family, to me, and to God knows how many other people before us. It was a Sunday afternoon in March when Terrell first brought her home. I remember the date exactly, March 15th, because it was the day before my 66th birthday, and I'd been feeling sorry for myself, thinking about how I'd be spending another birthday alone. Terrell had called that morning to say he was bringing someone special for Sunday dinner, and I'd spent the entire day cooking his favorite meal: fried chicken, mac and cheese, collard greens, cornbread, and peach cobbler for dessert. I was in the kitchen, putting the finishing touches on the cobbler, when I heard his key in the front door. "Mama, I'm here," he called out like he had been doing since he was a little boy.
"I'm in the kitchen, baby," I called back, wiping my hands on my apron and smoothing down my hair. I wanted to look presentable for whoever this special someone was. When they walked into my kitchen, I nearly dropped the spoon I was holding. The woman with my son was absolutely gorgeous, the kind of beautiful that makes you stop and stare, the kind that makes other women feel insecure and men forget their own names. She was maybe 30, 32 at the most, tall and elegant with perfect posture and the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you're the most beautiful woman in any room you enter. "Mama," Terrell said, and I could hear the pride in his voice, "I want you to meet Simone. Simone Baptiste. Simone, this is my mother, Vivian Carter." Simone stepped forward with a warm smile and extended her hand. Her grip was firm, confident, and her skin was baby soft. "Mrs. Carter," she said, and her voice was like honey, smooth, sweet, with just a hint of a southern accent that I couldn't quite place. "I've heard so much about you. Terrell talks about you constantly. He loves you so much." The words were perfect. The tone was perfect. The smile was perfect. Everything about her was perfect, and that should have been my first warning. In my 66 years on this earth, I had learned that when something seems too good to be true, it usually is. But I was lonely. I had been alone for 23 years since my husband Charles died, and seeing my son with someone who made him so obviously happy filled a hole in my heart that I didn't even realize was there. "Welcome to my home, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into a hug. She smelled like expensive perfume and felt fragile in my arms, like a delicate flower that might break if I held her too tight. Dinner was magical. Simone complimented everything: my cooking, my house, my garden, the family photos on the walls. She asked about my work at the hospital, my church, my hobbies. She seemed genuinely interested in every word I said, hanging on my stories like they were the most fascinating thing she'd ever heard. "Mrs. Carter," she said, as we sat around my dining room table, "Terrell told me you were a nurse at Grady for 35 years. That must have been so rewarding, but so difficult, too." "It was," I said, feeling myself warm to her attention. "Long hours, hard work, but I love taking care of people. It's what I was called to do." "I can see where Terrell gets his caring nature," she said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "It must have been so hard raising him alone after you lost your husband."
It was hard, I admitted. But Terrell was such a good boy. He never gave me any trouble, always helped around the house, worked part-time jobs to help with expenses. I'm so proud of the man he's become. "As you should be," Simone said, looking at my son with such love and adoration that it made my heart sing. "He's the most wonderful man I've ever met." After dinner, while Terrell was loading the dishwasher, Simone insisted on helping me wrap up the leftovers. "Mrs. Carter," she said quietly, so Terrell couldn't hear, "I want you to know that I love your son very much. I've never felt this way about anyone before." "I can see that, baby," I said, touched by her sincerity. "And I can see how much he loves you too. I just want you to know that I would never do anything to hurt him or you. I know how important you are to him, and I hope you'll give me a chance to be part of this family." The vulnerability in her voice, the way she looked at me with those big brown eyes full of hope and uncertainty, completely melted my heart. "Sweetheart," I said, putting my hand on her cheek, "you already are part of this family." She smiled then, not the perfect practice smile she'd been wearing all evening, but something smaller, more genuine, more fragile. For just a moment, she looked younger, almost childlike. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means everything to me." That night, after they left, I called my sister Denise in Birmingham. "Girl, you should see this woman Terrell brought home. She's beautiful, sweet, respectful, everything I could have hoped for in a daughter-in-law." "That's wonderful, Viv," Denise said, but I could hear something in her voice. "How long have they been dating?" "I'm not sure exactly. A few months, I think. Why?" "Just be careful, sister. You know how men can be when they're thinking with the wrong head. Make sure she's not just after his money." "Denise, Terrell's not rich. He does well, but he's not millionaire material." "No, but he's got his own business, owns his house outright, drives a nice car. To some women, that's rich enough." I brushed off her concerns then. Denise had always been suspicious of people, probably from working 20 years as a social worker and seeing the worst side of human nature. But looking back now, I realized she was the only person who tried to warn me. Over the next few months, Simone became a regular fixture in our lives. She and Terrell would come for Sunday dinner every week. She would call me during the week just to chat, asking about my day, telling me about hers. She worked as a nurse at Emory University Hospital, she said, in the cardiac unit. The hours were long and stressful, but she loved helping people, just like I had.
We had so much in common, it seemed. We both loved gardening, cooking, old movies from the 1940s and 50s. We both read romance novels and mystery books. We both believed in God, but struggled with organized religion sometimes. She was like the daughter I never had, and I found myself looking forward to her calls, her visits, her bright presence in my life. Terrell was happier than I'd seen him since he was a child. He smiled more, laughed more, seemed more relaxed and content. When I'd ask him about marriage, he'd just grin and say, "Mama, when the time is right, you'll be the first to know." Everything was perfect for 6 months, and then my world started falling apart. It began with small things, little memory lapses that I attributed to getting older. I'd forget where I put my keys, what day of the week it was, whether I'd taken my blood pressure medication. Nothing major, just the kind of senior moments that everyone experiences as they age. But then the lapses became more frequent, more concerning. I'd start cooking dinner and forget I'd put something on the stove. I'd go to the grocery store and forget what I needed to buy. I'd be talking to someone and lose my train of thought mid-sentence. "Mama, are you feeling okay?" Terrell asked one Sunday when I forgot to put salt in the greens. "You seem a little off lately." "I'm fine, baby," I said. But I wasn't fine. I was scared. My mother had developed dementia in her 70s, and I was terrified that it was happening to me too. "Maybe you should see a doctor," Simone suggested gently, "just to make sure everything's okay. Sometimes there are simple explanations for memory problems, low blood sugar, vitamin deficiencies, medication interactions." She was right, of course, and since she was a nurse, she would know about these things. I made an appointment with my primary care physician, Dr. Harrison, who'd been taking care of me for 15 years. The exam was thorough. Blood work, cognitive tests, even an MRI of my brain. Everything came back normal. "Vivian, there's nothing wrong with you medically," Dr. Harrison said. "Your numbers are all excellent for someone your age. Sometimes stress, depression, or major life changes can cause the kind of symptoms you're describing. Have you been through anything difficult lately?" I thought about it. My life had actually been better than it had been in years. I had Simone and Terrell in my life. I was healthy, financially stable, happy. There was no reason for me to be stressed or depressed.
No, I told him. Everything's been wonderful lately. Well, let's keep monitoring it. Sometimes these things resolve on their own, but if it gets worse, we'll dig deeper. I left his office feeling relieved, but still confused. If there was nothing wrong with me medically, why was I feeling so foggy and forgetful? It was Simone who suggested a solution. "Mrs. Carter," she said the next Sunday as we cleaned up after dinner, "I've been thinking about what Dr. Harrison said. You know, there are some wonderful supplements that can help with cognitive function, natural things that might help you feel sharper, more focused." "What kind of supplements?" "Oh, ginkgo biloba, omega-3 fatty acids, B-complex vitamins. I could pick some up for you if you'd like. The hospital pharmacy has pharmaceutical-grade supplements that are much better than what you'd get at the drugstore." It seemed reasonable. Natural supplements couldn't hurt, and if they might help, why not try them? "That's very sweet of you, baby," I said, "if it's not too much trouble." "No trouble at all. I want you to feel your best." The supplements came in a plain white bottle with a computer-printed label that said, "Cognitive Support Blend. Take 2 tablets daily with food." Simone explained that the hospital made up custom blends for their staff and patients, and she'd gotten the pharmacist to make a special batch for me. I started taking them religiously, 2 tablets every morning with breakfast. And you know what? I did start feeling better, sharper, more focused, less forgetful. Within a few weeks, the memory lapses had almost completely stopped. "See," Simone said when I thanked her, "sometimes we just need a little help. There's no shame in that." But as my memory improved, other things started getting worse. I began having trouble sleeping, waking up multiple times in the night, feeling anxious and restless. My appetite decreased dramatically. Foods I'd always loved suddenly tasted bland or made me nauseous. I lost 15 pounds in 2 months without trying.
most concerning of all, I started having episodes where my heart would race for no apparent reason, leaving me dizzy and short of breath. "Mama, you look terrible," Terrell said one Sunday, studying my face with concern. "Have you been eating? You're getting so thin."
"I'm fine," I insisted. But I wasn't fine. I was weak, tired, and increasingly anxious about what was happening to my body. "I think you should go back to Dr. Harrison," Simone suggested. "These symptoms could be related to your thyroid or your heart. At your age, you can't take chances with these things." Another round of tests showed that my thyroid was slightly overactive, which could explain the weight loss, heart palpitations, and sleep problems. Dr. Harrison prescribed a low dose of medication to regulate it. "This should help," he said, "but I want to see you again in 6 weeks to make sure the dosage is right." The medication did help with some symptoms, but I continued to feel weak and tired. My energy levels were nothing like they used to be. I had always been active, gardening, cleaning, cooking elaborate meals, volunteering at church. Now I struggled to get through basic daily tasks. "Maybe you should consider getting some help around the house," Simone suggested during one of our phone calls. "Someone to come in a few days a week to clean, do laundry, help with grocery shopping." The idea made me feel old and helpless, but I had to admit it made sense. I was struggling to keep up with things that had always been easy for me. "I don't know if I can afford that," I said. "Home health care is expensive." "What if I helped out? I could come by after work a few days a week, help you with whatever you need. I wouldn't charge you anything. You're family." The offer was so generous, so loving, that it brought tears to my eyes. "Simone, baby, that's so sweet of you. But you work long hours. You need your rest. Mrs. Carter, you took care of people your whole career. You raised Terrell all by yourself. You've given so much to others. Let me give back to you now." And that's how Simone became my caregiver. She started coming by 3 evenings a week after her shift at the hospital. She would bring groceries, cook dinner, help me with laundry and cleaning. She was gentle, patient, and incredibly competent. Having been a nurse herself, she understood exactly what I needed. "You're an angel," I told her one evening as she helped me organize my medications into weekly pill dispensers. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'll never have to find out. I'll always be here for you," she said, squeezing my hand. Terrell was thrilled that his girlfriend was taking such good care of his mother.
"Mama, I think she's the one," he confided to me one Sunday after Simone had gone home. "I'm thinking about proposing." My heart soared. Despite my health problems, I was happier than I'd been in years. My son had found true love with a wonderful woman who treated me like her own mother. Life was good. The proposal happened 2 months later, on Thanksgiving Day. Terrell had planned it perfectly. After our big family dinner, as we sat around the table talking and laughing, he suddenly got down on one knee, right there in my dining room. "Simone Baptiste," he said, pulling out a ring box, "you've made me happier than I ever thought possible. You've brought joy and love into my life and my mother's life. Will you marry me?" Simone's reaction was perfect. Surprise, tears, trembling hands as she said yes. The ring was beautiful, a 2-carat solitaire that must have cost him a small fortune. As I watched them embrace and kiss, I cried tears of pure happiness. My son was getting married to a woman who loved him and loved me. I would finally have the daughter I'd always wanted. Maybe they'd give me grandchildren soon. Life couldn't get any better. The wedding was set for the following September, almost a year away. Simone wanted time to plan everything perfectly, and I threw myself into helping her despite my ongoing health issues.
We spent hours looking at venues, tasting cakes, choosing flowers. It was the most fun I'd had in years. But as the months passed, my health continued to decline. The thyroid medication helped some, but I was still losing weight, still having episodes of heart palpitations and dizziness. I had to stop volunteering at church because I didn't have the energy. My beautiful garden, which had been my pride and joy for 30 years, became too much for me to maintain. Maybe I should move into assisted living, I mentioned to Terrell one day when he found me sitting on my front porch because I'd been too tired to make it back into the house after getting the mail. Absolutely not, he said firmly. This is your home, Mama. You're not going anywhere. But baby, I'm becoming a burden. Simone shouldn't have to spend all her free time taking care of me. You're not a burden. You're my mother, and Simone loves taking care of you. She's told me so many times how much she enjoys spending time with you. It was true. Simone never acted like caring for me was a chore. She seemed to genuinely enjoy our time together, and she was incredibly patient with my increasing limitations. When I had trouble remembering things, she would gently remind me. When I felt weak or dizzy, she would help me to a chair and bring me water or juice. When I felt scared about what was happening to my body, she would hold my hand and reassure me that everything would be okay.
Besides, Terrell continued, after the wedding, Simone's going to move in here with us. She's already talked to her supervisor about transferring to a position with more regular hours so she can be here more. You'll have full-time help, and I'll have peace of mind knowing you're being taken care of by someone who loves you. The plan made perfect sense. My house was large enough for all of us, and having Simone living here would solve all my problems. I wouldn't have to worry about cooking, cleaning, or managing my medications. I wouldn't have to be alone when I felt scared or sick, and Terrell wouldn't have to worry about me anymore. That sounds wonderful, I said, and I meant it. The wedding was beautiful. Simone looked stunning in a simple but elegant white dress, and Terrell couldn't stop smiling. I cried through the entire ceremony, overwhelmed with happiness for them and gratitude that I was healthy enough to be there. My sister Denise came down from Birmingham, along with several of my cousins and old friends from church. She seems nice, Denise said during the reception, but I could hear reservation in her voice. She's perfect, I said. She takes such good care of me, and she makes Terrell so happy. That's good. I don't know, Viv. There's something about her that I can't put my finger on. She seems almost too good to be true. I was getting tired of Denise's suspicions. What do you mean? I tried to talk to her about her family, where she's from, but she was really vague. And when I asked about her job at the hospital, she changed the subject. Maybe she's just private. Not everyone likes to talk about themselves with people they've just met. Maybe. I just think you should be careful, that's all. But I didn't want to be careful. I didn't want to be suspicious. I wanted to enjoy this happiness, this feeling of being part of a complete family again. After the honeymoon, a week in Jamaica that I paid for as my wedding gift to them, Simone moved into my house. We converted my old sewing room into an office for her, and she made the transition seamlessly. She took over all the household responsibilities without being asked, managing the grocery shopping, cooking, cleaning, and laundry with quiet efficiency. She also took over managing my medications and healthcare appointments. As a nurse, she was much better at keeping track of my various prescriptions and making sure I took everything on schedule. She even started accompanying me to my doctor's appointments to help me remember what questions to ask and what the doctor said. Dr. Harrison seemed impressed with her knowledge and dedication.
You're lucky to have such a caring daughter-in-law, he told me after one appointment where Simone had asked several intelligent questions about my treatment options. Life settled into a comfortable routine. Simone would get up early to make breakfast for all of us before she left for work. She would call me during her lunch break to check on me and see if I needed anything. After work, she would stop by the pharmacy or grocery store if necessary, then come home to cook dinner and help me with whatever I needed in the evening. Terrell was working longer hours, trying to build his engineering firm, so he was often gone from early morning until late at night. But I didn't mind because I had Simone, and she was better company than I could have hoped for. We would sit in the living room after dinner, watching our favorite TV shows or just talking. She would tell me about her patients at the hospital, and I would share stories from my own nursing career. She was an excellent listener and never seemed bored by my rambling tales of the old days. "I wish I could have known you when you were young," she said one evening as we looked through old photo albums. "You must have been such a good nurse. I can tell from the way you talk about your patients that you really cared about them." "I did care," I said. "Sometimes too much. My supervisor used to tell me I got too emotionally involved, but I couldn't help it. When someone is hurting, you have to care." "That's what makes a good nurse," she said. "Compassion. Not everyone has it." These conversations made me feel valued, respected. Simone treated me like my opinions mattered, like my experiences were worth hearing about. It had been a long time since anyone had made me feel that way. But as the months passed, I noticed that I was seeing less and less of my old friends. Partly it was because my health made it difficult to get out and about, but partly it was because Simone seemed to discourage outside visitors. "Mrs. Carter, you're not feeling well today," she would say when my friend Louise called to see if she could come by. "Maybe another time when you're stronger." Or, "Mrs. Carter is resting now. Can I have her call you back later?" when my church friend Margaret wanted to visit. At first, I appreciated her protectiveness. I was often tired and not really up for company, but gradually I realized that I was becoming increasingly isolated from everyone except Terrell and Simone. When I mentioned this to Simone, she was immediately apologetic. "Oh no, Mrs. Carter, I'm so sorry. I was just trying to protect your energy, but I didn't realize I was keeping you from people you want to see. Please invite anyone you want. I'll make sure the house is ready for company." But somehow it never worked out. When I would call Louise or Margaret to invite them over, they always seemed to have other plans. When I suggested meeting them for lunch at our usual spot, I would feel too tired or sick to follow through. "Maybe your friends just don't know how to handle your health problems," Simone suggested. "Some people get uncomfortable around illness. It doesn't mean they don't care about you." That made sense. I had seen it happen before. When people get older or sicker, their social circles tend to shrink. It was natural, if disappointing. My sister Denise still called regularly, but our conversations became shorter and less frequent. She seemed frustrated with me, though I couldn't understand why. "Viv, you sound different," she said during one of our calls. "Distant. Are you sure you're okay?" "I'm fine, Denise, just tired." "Are you taking care of yourself, eating enough, getting out of the house?" "Simone takes good care of me. I don't need to worry about anything." "That's what concerns me. You've always been so independent. Now you sound like you can't do anything for yourself." Her criticism stung. "I'm not as young as I used to be, Denise. I need help sometimes." "I know that. But you're only 67, Viv. You shouldn't be acting like an invalid." After that conversation, I found myself making excuses not to talk to Denise. Her judgment and concern felt heavy, exhausting. It was easier to just focus on my small world of home, Simone, and Terrell. A year after the wedding, on a routine visit to Dr. Harrison, he expressed some concerns about my continued weight loss and fatigue. "Vivian, I'm worried about you. Your thyroid levels are normal now, but you're still losing weight. You've lost almost 30 pounds in the past 18 months. That's significant for someone your size." 30 pounds. I hadn't realized it was that much, but looking at myself in the mirror, I could see that my clothes hung loose and my face looked gaunt. I just don't have much of an appetite, I explained. Food doesn't taste good anymore. Are you depressed? Sometimes depression can cause loss of appetite and fatigue. I thought about it. Was I depressed? I didn't feel sad exactly, more like empty, disconnected, like I was going through the motions of life without really participating.
I don't know, I said honestly. I'd like to run some more blood work, check for other conditions that might explain your symptoms, and I think we should consider having you see a specialist. When Simone heard about Dr. Harrison's concerns, she was immediately supportive. Of course we should get you checked out by a specialist, she said. I can help you research the best doctors, make appointments, whatever you need. The specialist was a geriatrician named Dr. Patricia Wolf, a kind woman in her 50s who specialized in age-related health issues. She spent 2 hours with me, going over my medical history, conducting a thorough examination, and asking detailed questions about my symptoms. Mrs. Carter, she said at the end of the appointment, I'd like to admit you to the hospital for a few days of observation and testing. There are several possibilities we need to rule out, and I think it would be best to do a comprehensive workup. The hospital stay was scheduled for the following week. Simone took time off work to be with me, staying in my room during the day and going home only to sleep and change clothes. You don't have to do this, I told her. Terrell can visit after work and I'll be fine. I want to be here, she said firmly. Your family. This is what family does. The tests were extensive. More blood work, a cardiac catheterization, a colonoscopy, CT scans of my chest and abdomen, even a bone marrow biopsy. They were looking for cancer, autoimmune diseases, infections, anything that might explain my ongoing decline. After 3 days, Dr. Wolf came in with the results. Mrs. Carter, I have good news. All of your tests came back normal. No cancer, no infections, no obvious autoimmune disorders. Your heart is strong, your organs are functioning well. Medically speaking, you're quite healthy for someone of your age. I should have felt relieved, but instead I felt confused and frustrated. Then why do I feel so terrible? That's a good question. Sometimes these symptoms can be related to stress, depression, or medication interactions. I'd like to bring in all of your medications and supplements so we can review them together. At home, Simone helped me gather all of my medications and supplements. There were more than I remembered. The thyroid medication, blood pressure pills, the cognitive support supplements she'd been giving me, calcium, vitamin D, a probiotic, something for heartburn, and a few others.
This is quite a list, Dr. Wolf said when we brought everything to her office. Some of these interactions could potentially cause the symptoms you're experiencing. I'd like to simplify your regimen, eliminate anything that's not absolutely necessary. She went through each medication and supplement, explaining what it was for and whether it was still needed. Several of them, including the cognitive support blend from Simone, she recommended discontinuing. I'm not familiar with this formulation, she said, examining the bottle. Can you tell me where it came from? Simone answered smoothly. It's a custom blend from our hospital pharmacy. A colleague of mine recommended it for cognitive support. I see. Well, given that Mrs. Carter's cognitive function seems to be normal now, I don't think she needs this anymore. In fact, some of these supplements can interfere with other medications if taken long-term. Of course, Simone said. Whatever you think is best. We left Dr. Wolf's office with a much simplified medication regimen, just the thyroid medication and blood pressure pills. Everything else was discontinued. That night, as Simone prepared my evening pills, she seemed troubled. Mrs. Carter, I'm worried about stopping the cognitive supplements so abruptly. Maybe we should taper off gradually. Dr. Wolf didn't mention tapering. She's not familiar with this particular formulation. As the person who's been monitoring your response to it, I think it might be safer to reduce the dose slowly rather than stopping all at once.
It made sense. Simone was a nurse. She understood these things better than I did. And she'd been so careful about my health all along. Okay, I agreed. You know best. So instead of stopping the supplements entirely, Simone reduced them to 1 tablet daily, then every other day, then twice a week. The gradual reduction seemed wise, and I appreciated her caution. But something strange happened during this tapering process. As I took fewer and fewer of the cognitive support tablets, I began to feel different, more alert, more like myself. Color seemed brighter, food tasted better, and I had more energy than I'd had in months. I think I'm feeling better, I told Simone one evening as we sat on the front porch watching the sunset.
That's wonderful, she said, but something in her voice sounded off. Disappointed, maybe? Maybe it was the medication interactions Dr. Wolf was talking about. Getting rid of some of those supplements seems to be helping. Maybe, Simone said quietly. 2 weeks later, I had completely stopped taking the cognitive support tablets, and the improvement in my health was dramatic. I had gained 5 pounds, was sleeping better, and felt more energetic than I had since before I started having health problems. I was feeling so much better that I decided to call my old friend Louise to invite her for lunch. "Vivian," she said, sounding surprised to hear from me. "How are you feeling? Simone told me you'd been very sick." "When did you talk to Simone?" "A few months ago. I called to check on you and she said you were too ill for visitors. She said the doctors weren't sure what was wrong, but that you were very weak and needed complete rest." I was confused. I remember being tired and not feeling well, but I didn't remember being so sick that I couldn't see friends. "I'm feeling much better now," I said. "Would you like to come for lunch this weekend?" "I'd love to. I've missed you." When I told Simone that Louise was coming for lunch, her reaction was strange. "Are you sure you're up for company? You've been doing so well, I'd hate for you to overexert yourself and have a setback." "I'm fine, Simone. I want to see my friend." "No, of course. I just want to make sure you don't push yourself too hard too fast." Louise's visit was wonderful. It felt so good to laugh and talk with an old friend, to feel connected to the world outside my house again. But I noticed that Simone hovered nearby, occasionally interrupting our conversation to check if I needed anything or to suggest that I might be getting tired. After Louise left, I realized something troubling. During our conversation, Louise had mentioned several events and gatherings that I didn't remember. A church fundraiser, a birthday party for one of our mutual friends, a funeral for someone we'd known for years. "I'm sorry I missed all of those things," I had said. "But Vivian, we invited you. Simone said you weren't feeling well enough to come."
I didn't remember any of those invitations. When I asked Simone about them later, she seemed surprised. "Oh, yes, there were several events you were invited to, but you were having such a hard time then. You told me to decline for you because you didn't feel well enough to go." But I didn't remember telling her that. In fact, I didn't remember being asked about any of those events at all. A seed of doubt began growing in my mind, small but persistent. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. The doubt grew stronger a few days later when my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, stopped by with a casserole. "Vivian, honey, I'm so glad to see you looking better," she said as we sat in my living room. "When Simone told me you'd been diagnosed with early-stage dementia, I was so worried about you." My blood went cold. "Dementia? Simone told you I had dementia?" Mrs. Henderson looked confused. "Well, yes, a few months ago when I asked if I could visit, she said the doctors had diagnosed you with early dementia and that you were having trouble recognizing people and remembering things. She said it was better if you didn't have too many visitors because it confused you." I felt like the floor was disappearing beneath my feet. Mrs. Henderson, I've never been diagnosed with dementia. All my tests have been normal. But Simone seemed so concerned. She said you'd had several episodes where you didn't remember her or Terrell and that the doctors were worried about your safety. Episodes where I didn't remember my own family? That had never happened, not once. After Mrs. Henderson left, I sat in my living room trying to process what I'd just learned. Simone had been telling people I had dementia. She'd been using this false diagnosis to keep people away from me, to isolate me from my friends and neighbors. But why? That evening, when Simone came home from work, I confronted her. Simone, Mrs. Henderson said you told her I had been diagnosed with dementia. Why would you say that? Simone's face flushed slightly, but she recovered quickly. Oh, Mrs. Carter, I'm so sorry. I think there was a misunderstanding. Remember when Dr. Harrison was concerned about your memory problems before we figured out it was medication interactions? I mentioned to Mrs. Henderson that the doctors were testing you for cognitive issues, and she must have misunderstood.
It sounded plausible, but something about her explanation felt rehearsed, too smooth. But she said you told her I was having episodes where I didn't recognize people. That's never happened. No, of course not. I think Mrs. Henderson might be getting confused herself. You know how older people sometimes mix up stories. Mrs. Henderson was 72 and sharp as a tack, but I let it slide. I wanted to believe Simone's explanation because the alternative was too disturbing to consider. But the seed of doubt continued to grow. A week later, I was looking for my insurance papers when I found something strange in the filing cabinet where I kept my important documents. There were medical records I'd never seen before, notes from doctor's appointments I didn't remember having, test results for procedures I'd never undergone. According to these records, I had been seen by a neurologist for progressive dementia. I had undergone extensive cognitive testing that showed significant memory loss and confusion. I had been prescribed medications for anxiety and depression that I'd never heard of. None of it was real. The dates on the records corresponded to times when I was feeling sick and foggy, but I had never seen these doctors or taken these tests. Someone had been creating false medical records in my name. My hands were shaking as I called Dr. Harrison's office. Dr. Harrison, this is Vivian Carter. I need to ask you something important. Have you ever referred me to a neurologist? No, Vivian. We discussed the possibility when you were having memory problems, but your symptoms resolved after we adjusted your medications. Why do you ask? I found some medical records that suggest I've been seeing a neurologist for dementia, but I have no memory of these appointments. There was a long pause. Vivian, that's very concerning. Can you bring those records to my office? I'd like to take a look at them. Dr. Harrison examined the false medical records with growing alarm. Vivian, these are definitely not from any doctor in our network. The letterhead looks legitimate, but the doctor named here, Dr. Stephen Matthews, doesn't exist. I've checked our database. So someone created fake medical records for me? It appears that way. This is a serious matter, Vivian. Medical fraud, identity theft, we need to report this to the authorities. But who would do something like this and why? Dr. Harrison looked at me carefully. Who has access to your personal information? Your insurance cards, social security number, medical history. The answer was obvious, but I didn't want to say it out loud. My daughter-in-law handles a lot of my paperwork. She comes with me to appointments, helps manage my medications. I think you need to be very careful, Vivian, and I think you need to have this conversation with someone you trust outside your immediate household. That night, I called my sister Denise. Denise,
I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without judging me. I told her everything. The memory problems, the isolation from friends, the false medical records, Simone's explanations that didn't quite add up. Viv, Denise said when I finished, you need to get away from that woman right now. I can't just leave. This is my house, and she's married to Terrell. Then you need to tell Terrell what's happening. He won't believe me. He loves her. He thinks she's taking wonderful care of me. Viv, listen to me. What you're describing sounds like elder abuse, financial abuse, medical abuse, emotional abuse. This woman is dangerous. But why would she do this? What does she gain? I don't know, but we need to find out. Can you get somewhere safe while we figure this out? Where would I go? You can come stay with me. Pack a bag, get in your car, and drive to Birmingham. Don't tell anyone where you're going. I can't just disappear. Terrell will worry. Terrell will survive. You might not if you stay there. The urgency in Denise's voice scared me, but it also gave me clarity. Something was very wrong, and I needed to protect myself. The next morning, after Simone left for work and Terrell left for the office, I packed a small suitcase with clothes and important documents. I left a note for Terrell saying that I was going to visit Denise for a few days and would call him later. The drive to Birmingham had never felt so long. Every mile I put between myself and Atlanta, I felt like I could breathe a little easier. Denise was waiting for me with open arms and a cup of coffee. "Okay," she said as we sat in her kitchen. "Now we're going to figure out exactly what this woman has been doing to you." We started with my finances. Using online banking, we went through my accounts for the past 18 months. What we found was staggering. Thousands of dollars in withdrawals I didn't remember making. Checks written to cash that I didn't remember signing. Credit card charges for medical equipment, prescriptions, and services I'd never received. "Viv, she's stolen over $40,000 from you," Denise said, pointing to the computer screen. $40,000? I felt sick. But that wasn't the worst of it. There were also insurance claims filed in my name for medical treatments I'd never received. Claims for home health care services, medical equipment, even a motorized wheelchair that I'd never seen. "She's been filing fraudulent insurance claims using your information," Denise said. "This isn't just theft, Viv. This is organized fraud." We printed out all the evidence and made copies of everything. Then Denise made some phone calls to people she knew from her work in social services. "I've got the name of an investigator who specializes in elder abuse cases," she said. "She's coming over this afternoon." Detective Maria Rodriguez was a small, intense woman in her 40s who listened to my story without interruption. When I finished, she asked to see all the evidence we'd gathered. "Mrs. Carter, what you're describing is a classic case of elder abuse and fraud. The false medical records, the financial theft, the isolation from friends and family, these are all standard tactics used by predators who target elderly victims." "But Simone isn't a stranger. She's my daughter-in-law."
Actually, that makes it worse. When the perpetrator is a family member or caregiver, victims are less likely to report the abuse, and when they do, they're less likely to be believed. Detective Rodriguez spent 3 hours going through my evidence and taking detailed notes. "Mrs. Carter, I need to ask you something important. Do you still have any of those supplements that Simone was giving you?" "Yes, I brought the bottle with me." She examined the white pills carefully. "I'd like to have these tested. Based on your description of your symptoms and the dramatic improvement when you stop taking them, I suspect these aren't vitamins at all." "What do you think they are?" "Could be anything. Sedatives, antipsychotics, even low doses of poison. There are substances that can cause confusion, memory loss, and physical weakness without showing up on routine blood tests." The room started spinning. "She was poisoning me?"
That's what we need to find out. But, Mrs. Carter, I need you to understand how serious the situation is. If this woman has been systematically drugging you, stealing from you, and isolating you, your life could be in danger. What should I do? Stay here with your sister while we investigate. Don't go back to Atlanta, don't tell anyone where you are, and don't trust any communications from Simone or even your son until we know more. But Terrell is innocent. He doesn't know what she's been doing. Maybe, but he's been living in the same house. Either he's completely oblivious or he's involved. Until we know which, you can't trust him either. The detective left with the pill bottle and promises to get back to us within a few days with test results. That night, my phone started ringing. First Terrell, then Simone, then Terrell again. I didn't answer. Finally, Terrell left a voicemail. "Mama, where are you? Your note said you were visiting Aunt Denise, but when I called her, she said she hadn't heard from you. Simone is worried sick. We both are. Please call me back and let me know you're okay." He had called Denise, but Denise was sitting right next to me and her phone hadn't rung.
"That's strange," Denise said. "I wonder who he actually called." We figured it out the next morning when Denise's neighbor mentioned seeing a woman asking questions about whether Denise had any visitors. She said she was looking for an elderly woman who might be staying here, the neighbor said it was a family emergency. Somehow, Simone had tracked me to Birmingham. She was looking for me. "We need to call Detective Rodriguez," Denise said. The detective's news was even more disturbing than we'd expected. The pills tested positive for lorazepam, a benzodiazepine that causes sedation and memory problems. There were also traces of lithium, which in the wrong doses can cause weakness, nausea, and cognitive impairment. So she was drugging me. Yes, and there's more. I ran Simone Baptiste through our database. Her real name is Simone Mitchell, and she has a criminal record in 3 states for fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. My worst fears were being confirmed. What else did you find? She's suspected in the deaths of at least 4 elderly people over the past 5 years. The pattern is always the same. She gets close to vulnerable seniors, gains their trust, isolates them from family and friends, then systematically steals from them while making them dependent on her care. The deaths? Officially ruled natural causes, but the circumstances were always suspicious. In each case, the victim's health declined rapidly while under her care, and she inherited money or property. I thought about how sick I'd become, how weak and confused I'd been. If I hadn't stopped taking those pills, if I hadn't started asking questions, "Detective, am I going to die?" Not if I can help it. But Mrs. Carter, we need to move fast. If she's following her usual pattern, she's probably already planning the next phase. What next phase? In previous cases, when the victim started getting suspicious, or when she'd stolen as much as she could, she would accelerate their decline. Higher doses of medication, more direct methods. She's always been careful to make it look natural. The detective's phone rang. After a brief conversation, she hung up with a grim expression.
"That was my partner in Atlanta. He's been watching your house. Simone left this morning with several large suitcases. Your son wasn't with her. She's running? Looks like it, which means she knows we're on to her. What about Terrell? We don't know. My partner is going to do a welfare check." 2 hours later, Detective Rodriguez got another call. This time, when she hung up, her face was pale. "Mrs. Carter, you need to sit down." I was already sitting, but I gripped the arms at the chair. "Your son is in the hospital. He was found unconscious in your kitchen this morning by a neighbor who saw the front door standing open." The world tilted. "Is he?" "He's alive, but he's in critical condition. The doctors think he was poisoned." We drove into Atlanta in record time. Denise behind the wheel while I sat in the passenger seat trying not to fall apart. My son, my baby, was fighting for his life because of a woman I had welcomed into our family.
The ICU at Grady Hospital was a place I knew well from my nursing days, but being there as a family member was completely different. Terrell looked so young lying in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines and monitors, his face pale and drawn. "Mrs. Carter," a doctor approached us. "I'm Dr. Kim, your son's attending physician. How is he?" "He's stable for now, but we're still trying to determine what he was poisoned with. His symptoms suggest a combination of substances, possibly sedatives and something that affects the heart. Will he be okay?" "It's too early to say. The next 24 hours will be critical." Detective Rodriguez arrived an hour later with an update. "We found Simone's car abandoned at the airport. She's gone, probably on a flight using one of her fake identities."
But she'll be caught, right? Eventually, yes. We've issued a nationwide alert, and we're working with federal agencies since she's crossed state lines. But it might take time. I sat by Terrell's bedside for the next 3 days, holding his hand and praying. Slowly, gradually, he began to improve. When he finally woke up, his first word was, "Mama." "I'm here, baby," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I'm here." "Where's Simone?" he asked weakly. I looked at Detective Rodriguez, who nodded. "Terrell, there are some things about Simone that you need to know." It took hours to tell him everything. The false medical records, the financial theft, the drugging, her criminal history. He listened in shock and disbelief, occasionally shaking his head. "I don't understand," he said when I finished. "She loved us. She took care of you. Why would she do this?" "Because she's not the person we thought she was, baby. She's a predator who targets families like ours." "But we were happy. She made me happy." My heart broke for him. He had lost not just his wife, but his entire sense of reality. Everything he thought he knew about his marriage, his life, had been a lie. "I know, baby. I know." The recovery was long for both of us. Terrell needed months of physical therapy to overcome the effects of the poisoning. I needed therapy of a different kind. Counseling to help me process the trauma of being systematically abused by someone I trusted and loved. The financial recovery was easier. With the evidence Detective Rodriguez had gathered, I was able to recover most of the stolen money through insurance claims and bank fraud protections. The house was never really at risk because Simone had never actually succeeded in getting a mortgage against it. 8 months later, we got word that Simone had been arrested in Phoenix, Arizona, where she had been working as a home health aide under yet another false identity. She had already targeted 2 elderly clients before the authorities caught up with her. She was extradited to Georgia to face charges for what she'd done to us. The trial was difficult, having to relive everything, to testify about how she'd manipulated and abused us, but it was also satisfying to see her finally held accountable for her crimes. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison for elder abuse, fraud, attempted murder, and a dozen other charges. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Today, 2 years later, I'm back in my house on Peachtree Street, but my life is completely different. I've installed security cameras and an alarm system. I've reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I volunteer at a center for elder abuse survivors, helping other victims tell their stories and heal from their trauma. Terrell is doing well. He's in therapy, processing the betrayal and trauma. He started dating again, cautiously, and I'm learning to trust his judgment
while staying appropriately protective. We've both learned important lessons about trust, vulnerability, and the importance of staying connected to people outside our immediate family. We've learned that predators can be charming, convincing, and patient. They can spend months or even years building trust before they reveal their true nature. But we've also learned about resilience, about the power of family bonds, and about the importance of speaking up when something doesn't feel right. Last week, I found something that brought all of this full circle. I was cleaning out old papers when I came across a letter that had been hidden in the back of my filing cabinet, a letter I'd never seen before, in Simone's handwriting. It was a detailed plan of everything she'd intended to do to us. How she would isolate me, drug me, steal from me, and eventually kill me while making it look like natural causes. How she would then comfort my grieving son, help him through his loss, and eventually inherit everything when she killed him, too. The letter was dated 3 months after she married Terrell. She had been planning our deaths almost from the beginning. I turned the letter over to Detective Rodriguez, who said it would help build the case against Simone for other victims. But for me, it served a different purpose. It reminded me how close we had come to losing everything and how grateful I should be for every day we have together. Tonight, Terrell is coming for Sunday dinner, just like old times. We'll sit around my dining room table, the same table where I first met Simone, and we'll talk and laugh and be grateful for our second chance. Because that's what we have now, a second chance at life, at family, at trust. And we're not going to waste it. If there's one thing I want people to take away from my story, it's this. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. If someone seems too good to be true, they probably are. And never, ever let anyone isolate you from the people who truly love you. Elder abuse is real. It's more common than most people realize, and it can happen to anyone. The perpetrators are often family members, caregivers, or people who seem trustworthy and caring. They're skilled at manipulation, patient in their approach, and ruthless in their execution.
But there is hope. There are resources. Investigators like Detective Rodriguez who specialize in these cases and support systems for survivors. Most importantly, there are people who care and who will fight for justice. I was lucky. I had a sister who refused to stop asking questions, a doctor who recognized the signs of abuse, and a detective who took my case seriously. Not every victim has those advantages, which is why it's so important for all of us to stay vigilant, to watch out for our elderly neighbors and family members, and to speak up when we suspect something is wrong. Simone Mitchell is in prison now, where she belongs, but there are others like her out there targeting vulnerable seniors every day. The best defense against them is awareness, vigilance, and the courage to ask difficult questions when something doesn't seem right. My story could have ended very differently. It almost did. But instead of ending in tragedy, it's become a story of survival, justice, and the unbreakable bonds of real family love. That's something no predator can ever take away.